The price of Bitcoin reached an all-time high of almost $20,000 this week, 3 years after the cryptocurrency last jumped to that level. On Monday, the value of one Bitcoin surged to $19,850, although it later fell back to the $19,200 level. Bitcoin was created in 2008 as a decentralized currency, meaning that it's not issued, managed, nor processed in transactions by a bank. It relies on a peer-to-peer network where transaction data is distributed, then secured, held by advocates as the future of money and borderless transactions, but on the other hand, questioned by skeptics on whether it's legitimate or just a get-rich-quick scheme enabling illicit movement of money. The debate still has not been settled after more than a decade. But what both sides can't deny is that the appetite for cryptocurrencies has been shooting up globally, spiking during November with more institutional investors snapping them up. We discuss these developments today with Charles Edwards, founder of Capriol Investments, and Melvin Matthews, board advisor to Orbit MI, joining us from Germany and New York. Thank you so much for joining us. Bitcoin is still undervalued, but of course some say maybe this is all a bubble. And Melvin, there has been so much talk over this over the years and on whether Bitcoin's moment has arrived every time it reached new heights. But really, it still hasn't stabilized as a currency, though. We see its value just continuing to shoot up, and now people are asking whether they should buy gold or Bitcoin. What's your answer to this?
Thank you, Sooyoung, and lovely to see you again. Some say that though it looks like the moment has arrived for Bitcoin, that is not really the case. And the reason is people are still not using it for day-to-day transactions, such as paying for routine shopping. But on the contrary, they appear to be hoarding it for future rise in value. And it has already achieved significant value by substantially rising over the last few years. Now, among the reasons people prefer investing in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is the fact that it does not seem to be prone to fiscal measures such as quantitative easing, which may temporarily increase the supply of money in the short term, but results in inflation, devaluation, etc. over time, greatly reducing the purchasing power of traditional money that we hold. On the question of should we buy gold or Bitcoin, we need to perhaps take a step back and evaluate the inherent nature of both gold and Bitcoin for investment purposes. There are quite a few similarities that gold and Bitcoin share. Firstly, both gold and Bitcoin are enormously liquid in their markets, where traditional money can be exchanged for them quite easily in most parts of the world. Secondly, gold is not just used for making jewelry, it also has applications in electronics, dentistry, etc. And while Bitcoin is used as a cryptocurrency, its underlying technology, blockchain, is now finding applications in many areas, from digital transactions to digital contracts. Thirdly, both Bitcoin and gold are not issued by a central bank or the federal government, and therefore not really dependent on them. Finally, they are both in limited supply, so there is only a certain amount to go around, like Charles alluded to. In the case of Bitcoin, only 21 million tokens will ever exist, which is how it was created by the mysterious creator Satoshi Nakamoto. And similarly, although gold is still mined, the amount we get is so low that demand always outstrips the supply. On the question of investing, I would suggest investing in both if you have the money and appetite for risk. So you end up with a diversified portfolio. Bitcoin, like other cryptocurrencies, has an advantage over gold. The fact that it is decentralized and not controlled by anybody in particular means that there is virtually no transaction fees. But then it also mostly is unregulated, and unlike gold, which has a well-established system for trading and tracking it, Bitcoin infrastructure is not exactly considered safe by the larger public. In past crypto exchange outages like the Mt. Gox disaster resulted in 460 million worth of investor money disappearing.
So, Melvin, it looks like there's definitely been a lot of institutional interest in Bitcoin very recently. So why would you say there is this sudden interest and the dramatic increase of holdings by investors?
Institutions are constantly on the lookout for new avenues for profits. And since Bitcoin is so volatile, institutional investors are increasingly looking for newer ways to invest in it, especially every time there is a price dip in cryptocurrencies. Recent surveys, for example, show institutional investors intend to increase their Bitcoin allocations regardless of short-term dips. And that is because they feel Bitcoin has been around for long enough, which is about a decade, to develop a certain credibility that time brings. Secondly, some believe that regulations for crypto market will improve and become clearer as time goes. And some also believe that the market will eventually become bigger, providing better liquidity, which is a feature that most institutional investors are looking for. Finally, all going well, institutions see the long-term value of cryptocurrencies going up, which is exactly what they want. And these could perhaps be the reasons for increase in holdings by progressive institutions.
Talking about regulation here, Melvin, so central banks and governments all around the world, they seem to have initially been at loss on what to do with cryptocurrencies. How do you think they should approach this policy blind spot? And do you think there's a way of designing a regulatory framework that really works?
Well, Sooyoung, governments have power because they control the supply of money. And that is not something they are willing or ready to give up that easily. Now, what has worked in favor for cryptocurrencies so far is the fact that the volume is quite low in comparison to the volumes that fiat currencies, globally turn over. Secondly, as mentioned earlier, at the moment, people are buying to hold as an asset and not to use for their daily transactions. So it's not really impacting governments so much. Thirdly, cryptocurrencies are designed to exist without any intervention by any government. Hence, it will continue to exist or coexist and flourish if governments don't interfere. Now, barring a few governments, most governments have not seen cryptocurrencies as a significant threat to the current status quo or existing fiat currencies. Hence, so far, government motivation for regulation has been only to curtail illegal activities such as money laundering or for trafficking, illegal drugs, weapons, payment for smuggling or terrorism-based transactions, etc., like Charles mentioned. Now, some of the most progressive countries that have hindered the growth and use of cryptocurrencies are basically China and India, for example, that have banned its citizens or advised its citizens not to dabble in cryptocurrencies. And this is despite the fact that until recently, 70 to 80% of all Bitcoin mining globally happened in China. Last year, in fact, the Chinese government took the step to ban mining as well. Now, some of the most progressive countries, on the other hand, that have not hindered the growth and use of cryptocurrencies in the Asia-Pacific region is Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, for example. And while in the Western world, there's Canada, the United Kingdom, Switzerland, France, the United States, which are examples of countries which are perhaps, which we can classify as friendly to cryptocurrencies, although regulations seem to be developing there as well.
And it looks like more and more countries are trying to find ways to really work with cryptocurrencies, as they do keep spiking in price, and it's not something that's going to go away, obviously. Well, I'm afraid this is where we're going to have to end the discussion today. That was Melvin Matthews joining us from New York, and Charles Edwards joining us from Germany. Thank you both very much for your time today.
Thank you, Sooyoung.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you as always for watching. We hope you have a lovely day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.